The Texas Longhorns are now 2-0 after they go to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and win on the road in a environment at a stadium where not many teams have won in Alabama, especially in non-conference play. And the Longhorns get it done Saturday night against the Nick Saban-led Alabama's Crimson Tide. Texas is now 2-0 on the season, still undefeated with one game left before it heads into Big 12 conference play, the final season of Big 12 conference play, before Texas is a full-time member of the SEC moving forward for its conference play. My name is Wes Crochet. Welcome in. This is Sports with Wes. This is the second installment video for the post-game thoughts, and I certainly want to get my post-game thoughts out there on Texas's big win on the road this past Saturday night. Who knows what the rest of the season will hold. I mean, it's now obviously on the team to carry this into next week against Wyoming, who's also an undefeated team and also was taken down a Big 12 opponent in week 1 in Texas Tech. So it's on Texas to make sure that they take care of business against Wyoming and then carry this win into conference play and not make the season just about this win, but go make the season about this season. And now it's on this team to do that. And Sark has been echoing that this week. He wants to maintain the level of focus and just make sure this team is ready to go compete again this next weekend, this Saturday at home at DKR as Texas hosts Wyoming. So I certainly want to talk about this game, though, before we get into Wyoming. And, obviously the big storyline, Quinn Ewers. Quinn played a really phenomenal game. This just as much of this, how this could be a turning point, a monumental moment for the Texas football program overall. This could be that moment in that game for Quinn Ewers. This is a quarterback who has had all of the hype in the world coming into college. Of course, he still had that hype when he made the transfer from Ohio State to Texas. And then we knew he kind of had this up and down season last year at Texas, and even really had kind of an up and down first game at home against Rice. And this win would not have happened without Quinn Ewers playing the way that he did, making the throws that he did. It was not, a perfect night for Quinn Ewers, but it was a damn good night for Quinn Ewers. And he finally displayed that deep ball that we have been teased with for so long. He finally displayed that now and had really a couple of great throws that were super important throughout this game to get some points on the board. And so we'll certainly talk about Quinn Ewers. I mean, that is the big storyline coming out of this game. I think there's another big storyline coming out of this game, and it's the fact that Texas, for what feels like, certainly under the Steve Sarkisian era, and then going even back to coaches prior, what feels like for the past decade, Texas has had this issue where they've been in these games and had this inability to close out games where things, are kind of going well, or they're putting some points on the board, and they just can't extend that lead. And they've been caught in these close games, these one-score games, and then, late for whatever reason, they just can't close it out, and they end up with a loss. And that certainly did not happen this Saturday night. Quite honestly, it was the opposite. And it kind of felt at first, and almost for 3 quarters, like, well, is this going to be another one of those games? Is this here we go again? And then Texas slammed the door shut in the 4th quarter. And I think that's a really big storyline for this program too. Texas was finally able to go into a very big marquee game and hold its own all the way to the end of the game and get a win. And I think for this entire team, that is something that they need to look at and realize and take confidence in. Like, look, we just did that. And not only did we do that, we did that in Alabama against Alabama, in an environment where not many teams, especially non-conference teams, have done this in a long, long time. So, it's one thing to go get a late game or get a win and really secure a win late in the game against, a number of opponents. But to do that on the road against a highly ranked opponent against Alabama, against Nick Saban, with all of the kind of the still question marks that have been surrounding this football program, I think that is a very important aspect of this win. And hopefully, ideally, again, Texas uses that to build off of it, and it becomes a turning point. And it becomes a moment where, if the season goes the way that the Longhorns are hoping that it goes, they look back to that game and said, that was it. We not only did Quinn Ewers play well, not only did the defense continue to step up, but we as a team, once we did that, once we got that win on the road against Alabama, we used that, and we just got our confidence and knew that we could go take on, pretty much any team, and we would go do our best to close out these games and go win. So hopefully that's what happens. And when you really look at this game, I have the play-by-play, the drive series play-by-play up here, and when you look at this game, it kind of, the first half and certainly into the third quarter felt like, again, like, okay, we've seen this play out before, kind of like, here we go again. Texas, and it kind of, this kind of happened in last year's Alabama game. Of course, we know Quinn Ewers got hurt, but we saw Steve Sarkisian in the play design and the schemes that he was implementing and that he was throwing at Nick Saban. And kudos to Sarkisian, kudos to Pete Kwiatkowski, kudos to the staff for staying aggressive and sticking to their game plan. They did not play keep away. They did not play to not to lose. They played to win, and they came to win, and they were aggressive, and they stayed aggressive for the entire game pretty much and did what they could do, and it worked out. But if you look at the play, the series sheet here in the scoring summary, going into the third quarter, I mean, it kind of felt similar. Like, it was very much a close kind of one-score-ish sort of game. Texas, of course, gets the ball first and ends up having to punt, so that's not great. Luckily, Texas defense comes back and gets an interception. But then when Texas got the ball on their second drive, they went down, and you were hoping that, they could go get a touchdown given where they had the ball. They're on the Alabama 30, and Texas ends up having to go for it on 4th and 2 in a series here. And luckily Quinn finds Jatavian Sanders for 7 yards, gets them down to the Alabama 5, and then they go first down, second down, third down. They only get a yard, and so now it's 4th and 4, and the goal line is just 4 yards away, and Texas elects to kick a field goal, which was probably the right move to go get points. But you're just kind of, from that moment, you're like, okay, Texas is going to need to, go get in the end zone. This is Alabama. They're on the road. They can't just keep settling for field goals. And they kind of just had to do that a little bit. I know Alabama comes back and kicks a field goal of their own, so we're tied 3-3. And then luckily Texas is able to go down and get a big touchdown. And this is where the first big Xavier Worthy play happened. It was a 44-yard, just absolute dime of a pass to Worthy. And Worthy made an incredible catch, tracking that ball all the way over his head in the end zone, and the ball just drops right into his hands. But credit to Worthy for that. And that was the moment, like, there it is. There's the deep pass. There's what we've been waiting for. There's that Ewers to Worthy connection. Okay, maybe we have something here. And that was also a big moment too, because in the drive prior to that, when Texas had to settle for a field goal, I think it was Worthy that had a drop in the end zone. And so he got his redemption almost, and he was able to shake off that early drop, go make a play, and now we're going. Now maybe Texas can actually go do this thing. Well, Texas gets the ball back after a punt. Kudos to the defense, and they have to settle for another field goal. So it's now 13-3. So in this moment, what could be 17-3, or what could even be 21-3, Texas is at 13-3 with a lead over Alabama. Texas and Alabama exchange punts, and then Alabama gets the ball back right before the halftime. Texas it looked like Sarkisian was trying to be aggressive in that final drive they had before the halftime. There was some talk about clock management. Should Sarkisian have just run it out? Should he have kept the ball away from Alabama? Personally, I like being aggressive there. I think that just showed, like, look, from Sarkisian's standpoint, I'm going to be aggressive. I'm coming to play to win this thing. Obviously hindsight is hindsight, and that's what it is. But I kind of like that display. Like, I have confidence in this team, and, it didn't end up working out. Texas did have to punt, and Alabama actually did end up getting a field goal. Their field goal kicker, Will Reichert, who was really good, hit a field goal. And so now it's 13-6 at the end of the half. So what could have been maybe 17-6, what could have been maybe 21-6, it's 13-6. And then Alabama comes out, they get the ball back at the start of the half, and they go down and kick a field goal, and quickly it's 13-9. And so you're thinking, okay, is this going to be one of those one-score games where Texas tried, they had these opportunities, they had these chances, they just couldn't quite get it done, and they're going to leave Alabama with a somewhat close loss, but still a loss, and it's kind of same old what we've seen. Well, For a while, Texas and Alabama exchange drives. Texas during this time misses a field goal to try to extend the lead. It's 13-9 still. And at the very end of the third quarter, Alabama completes a huge pass of their own. Really just the Longhorn secondary, which we'll talk about here in a minute, just really got dominated in this moment, and just kind of almost like tackled themselves. And Alabama, the receiver, goes for 49 yards and a touchdown. And now Alabama, for the first time all game, at the very end of the third quarter, has a lead, and it's now 16-13. Alabama's winning. So now you're thinking, okay, Texas is now losing this game. There's basically a quarter left. This is going to be one of those moments. Like, this is a defining moment. What does Texas do? How do they respond? Is this going to be the same old thing that they've done in the past where it's a one-score game and they're going to lose it on the road? Or can Texas actually go do something here? Can Texas, go respond and keep fighting and working through adversity? And that's exactly what Texas does. Texas goes down, and Quinn Ewers hits the classic. It's a play that we've seen now against Rice. I think against Rice it was on the right side. I think against Alabama it was on the left side. But it's a play we saw back in the orange and white game. It's just that little slant or whatever it is, that little in route that A.D. Mitchell runs, and Texas goes down. And this was the drive where Jatavian Sanders had his big 50-yard rumble down the field, and Texas responds 20-16. And you're thinking, okay, Texas is back up. Maybe they can, go make something happen. Let's go defense. Go get a stop. And luckily, the defense does get a stop. They kudos again to Pete Kwiatkowski for his scheme, his game plan. And they make Jalen Milroe uncomfortable. They make that Alabama offense do things that they don't want to do, especially throwing the ball. And Milroe throws an interception. And so I was thinking in that moment, Texas has to go score a touchdown. You can't just settle for a field goal on this drive, because then it's still a one-score game. 23. It was 20-16 at that point. You go score a field goal, that's 23-16. That's a one-score game. Texas has to go extend this lead, like go create some separation. Then that's what Texas does. They go down and they score a touchdown, and thankfully, I say go down. Thankfully, that interception happened in the Alabama side of the field, and so the ball was basically, I think it was on the 5-yard line when Texas got it, and they were able to actually go get a touchdown. Jonathan Brooks go runs it in with the help of some great blocking up front, and that was to me a kind of a different moment too. Like earlier in the game, Texas failed to get into the end zone from the 5 or the 4 and settle for a field goal, and this time they go in. It's 1st and goal on the Alabama 5, and they just go right down the middle, and they just push it right in the middle, right in the end zone, and boom, 27-16, and Texas has finally extended this lead again. So from there on out, it was like, look, just pace them, just keep the foot on the gas pedal, just keep going, even if Alabama comes down and scores, which they did. And this game ends up being 34-24. Just like keep doing enough to where you just pace them. And kudos to Texas. They did that. They did it on the road. They did it against Nick Saban. They did it at Alabama in Tuscaloosa, a place where, like we've mentioned and like we know, many teams have not gone into Tuscaloosa and won on the road, especially non-conference teams. And Texas goes and leaves Alabama with a win. And, just an incredible game overall. There were certainly moments where I was uneasy. I was looking at the dog who's just, carefree over in the corner chewing on a little toy throughout the whole game. And I was kind of jealous at some points. But by the end of it, I was ecstatic and blown away and almost couldn't believe what Texas had pulled off. So kudos to the team. Kudos to the coaching staff. It was really a collective effort throughout. And, Texas didn't play a perfectly clean game. And that's just kind of sometimes how it goes on the road, especially against a team like Alabama. I mean, you're going to have moments, and we can talk about those here, where things break down or things just don't work. You're going up against good talent on the other side of the team, other side of the field. But Texas responded, and that's the biggest thing. They worked through that adversity. They didn't let those moments keep them down. They responded. When Ewers maintained his poise and composure, the defense kept coming out and fighting. Even if they got beat on certain plays or drives, they kept coming out and making plays. And overall, the staff, Sarkisian, Kwiatkowski, they just kept sticking to their scheme. They kept calling their plays. They were very dialed in. all around, it was a team effort, and just an incredible win for the Longhorns. So, again, I think the national storyline here is Quinn Ewers, and of course Texas beating Alabama. In a macro view, that's the national storyline. I think really how the game played out, the fact that Texas early on had chances to go up and extend a lead to be a multi-score lead, and they just couldn't get it done. We've seen that in years past. But the fact that they even were down for the first time in the game late in the third quarter, heading into the fourth quarter, that moment where Texas was like, look, we're just going to keep going. We're going to keep attacking. We're going to keep doing what we've been doing. To me, that was a monumental moment. And I hope, you hope that Texas reflects on that, builds on that, and carries that into conference play into the rest of the season. Because we have not really seen that from this Texas Longhorns team in that environment in a while. And I think that was a big storyline from this game. So, and apologize again if my voice if I'm a little nasally or something. I was working through a head cold last week, so you might have heard it on last week's video too. Still working through that today, but I should be good to go in the coming days. Overall, incredible game. I want to get down into some specific position groups, performances, and looking at some stats right here. And I'm going to start with the defense, actually. The defense is really proving to be a strength of this football team, and especially the front. The defensive line was a menace all game long. Again, we saw that against Rice, and that's against Rice. So coming into this game, you've heard the talk about Alabama's offensive line and how big they are, and Milroe is this really athletic quarterback who can, when a play breaks down, use his legs to escape. And I want to really credit, and I think we're seeing the strength of the team. One of the strengths is absolutely that defensive front and their ability to rotate guys in and out, the depth that they have, the players that they have. You're seeing, not only the interior of that defense where T'Vondre Sweat is and other guys, but you're seeing the exterior, the pressure, which was kind of a question coming into the season, who on the edge would emerge. Well, this game, it was Ethan Burke and Barron Sorrell. And then to a certain extent, Anthony Hill was just used as just certain kind of specialized weapon around the defense. And that was just really fun to watch. I think, let's see, I'm going to see what sack stats were, but, overall, Texas held Alabama to 5 of 14 on third down, which is always a big thing. Texas itself was 7 of 18 on third down. Texas was held Alabama. Or actually, Alabama did convert its only fourth down attempt, which is what you don't want to see that. But if we call it 6 of 15, that's a win, for the Texas defense. And so not only that, but getting 2 turnovers the way they did, the overall scheme and game plan against Milroe, he is an electric quarterback. And I think you'll see as the season goes on, certain teams are not going to be able to handle him athletically, and he'll go win games for Alabama. I don't think Alabama should give up on Milroe. I know he had some, of course, he threw 2 interceptions and had some misses throwing the ball, but he's still he was a highly rated recruit for a reason. And so I think if Alabama can figure out ways to really use what he's good at better than they did against Texas, that will be a scary offense with Milroe back there if they stick with Milroe. Again, though, kudos to Texas and Pete Kwiatkowski and that defense for not allowing Milroe and Alabama to get comfortable. They basically took away Milroe's running ability best that they could. They made him uncomfortable. They kept him in the pocket. They really tried to make him beat them with his arm, and he did, 1 or 2 times. But for the most part, the defense stepped up big time. So the front of the defense is strength. The linebackers are continuing to be very solid. Ryan Watts was very good I think he was on the boundary side for Texas defense, which is another storyline to watch. Some of the best defenses, especially in the Big 12, typically have an anchor corner. Like they have one corner where they can just throw him out on coverage, and they feel pretty good about his ability to take out whatever receivers over there. And that allows you to do other things on the other side of the field. Typically, it's a boundary corner, and then you play the field with other guys. And Maybe if there's lesser guys on that side, you can put safeties over them and whatever. But you're usually asking that corner on that boundary side to go lock up that receiver. You may not have help over the top of you. Go win that battle. And he really did that against Alabama receivers that are super fast. We saw that speed on display in some of those plays. So I think you're starting to see this defense take shape. It was good to see Jalen Catalon lead the team in tackling. I do still wonder about the back end of that defense. That's something we talked about last week against Rice. Rice didn't really test Texas defense, their coverage deep. They just didn't have the ability to do that. And so coming into this game is one of my questions, like how is Texas is going to hold up on the back end with these fast Alabama wide receivers? And we kind of saw it was a little bit of a mixed bag, but look, those Alabama wide receivers are fast, and not every team that Texas plays is going to have wide receivers of that speed or that many of them. But I think there's things to be optimistic about with this Texas secondary. I think this is also a group that collectively hasn't played together a lot. I know there's some guys that are carryover guys, but you also have some young guys in there that are getting playing time. You have a guy like Jalen Catalon, who's a transfer. So there's opportunity for this unit to still gel. And in secondary, you really do have to gel back there and know where your counterparts are in the secondary and know where you should be in coverage, whether it's in zone, whether it's in man, whether it's a mixed coverage. And so I think that's something to watch moving forward. Can this secondary gel and really become a solid back line, because the front line is doing its job and the linebackers are pretty much doing their job for the most part. Now it's going to be on that back line, the back line secondary and really the safeties to do their job. So we'll see how that plays out moving forward. But for the most part, I would say they won the battle, the war against Alabama. Maybe they lost a couple battles or so, but they won the war overall. And certainly, they got 2 interceptions. So that's 2 weeks in a row where they've gotten turnovers. So kudos to them. So defense, I was impressed with Pete Kwiatkowski. I think this was always going to be a big season for PK to bring things together, just like it is for Sarkisian and Texas football overall. PK needs to, in the season, have to continue to do this in conference play, but keep this unit ready to go week in and week out and show consistency and show that you can be a unit to be leaned on. Sometimes, I think last year, and this might have been a stat I talked about before the season started, but seemed like there was moments when like Texas was winning, or if the offense was doing good, the defense was struggling, and if the defense was doing good, the offense was struggling, and they never were quite on the same page. And we just saw what it looks like when, for the most part, those two units are on the same page, and they left Alabama with a win. And so you want to see Pete Kwiatkowski and this unit continue to play more consistently, or just continue to play consistently moving forward. But so far, that's been a very strong unit. Certainly against Alabama, it's one thing to do that against Rice, but to do that against Alabama in Alabama on the road with that game plan, kudos to that side of the ball. And hopefully they can carry that into Big 12 where, look, there probably won't be a team as talented as Alabama that Texas will face in maybe the rest of the season. And I don't want that to be a knock on these teams. I mean, that's just the kind of the reality of how these teams are structured in the Big 12. That's not to say that these teams are not capable of beating Texas, and Texas knows that. I mean, Texas has not had a good record against conference opponents in a handful of years now. And we know teams come to Austin ready to play Texas, or they're ready to host Texas on the road. And we know teams in conference play, when that gets here, are going to want to beat Texas in the final year of Texas being in the Big 12. So I say all that to say, it's one thing to get up for a team like Alabama. Texas is the team that got up for Alabama on the road going into their house. Now, for the rest of the season, almost every game is going to be that opponent getting up to play Texas, especially if Texas continues to win, if they're highly ranked, whatever it may be. So there's going to be different things thrown at this Texas defense. There's going to be different, types of play. There's going to be different schemes. So I'm really curious to see how Pete Kwiatkowski takes this moment, takes this performance with this group, and carries that into next week against Wyoming, who has already taken off and beaten a conference opponent in Texas Tech, and they're undefeated. Wyoming is, and then into conference play as well. So overall, great performance by the defense, and you want to see that continue to build, especially the back line of that secondary. Offensively, what more can you say? Texas did eclipse 100 yards rushing, got 105 yards. And then they did pass for almost 350 yards, just shy of it by 1 yard, 349 yards. And Quinn Ewers was everything he needed to be in this game. He was 24 of 38 for 349 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. And if we look at the box score, you had guys like Xavier Worthy making his plays. He did have a drop early on, but he redeemed himself in that drive afterwards with that big touchdown reception. A.D. Mitchell made some big catches and certainly had a touchdown pass or reception himself. I love seeing Jatavian Sanders make some plays, and I brought this up last week. I think he could be, obviously an important piece and mismatch in this offense, and we really saw some of that again this game against Alabama. He had a huge rumble, about a 50-yard rumble down the field that really helped this Texas team. Jatavian Sanders actually ended up with the most receiving yards, 5 receptions, and 114 yards overall. Jordan Whittington had some nice plays. So we saw him 3 receptions for 44 yards. So overall, passing wise, and kudos to the offensive line, they kept Quinn Ewers clean and off the ground. And that kind of goes both ways. Offensive line did its job in pass protection. Ewers did his job getting the ball out just enough time, but also buying enough time to get passes out. So all in all, offensively, great performance for the Longhorns. I don't think there was a single turnover. There were a couple fumbles, and I think it was Jonathan Brooks who picked up 1 or 2 of them. So that's certainly something that Texas will want to look at, just making sure that their exchange between quarterback and center is all good to go. But for the most part, great performance by the offense. I think, one of the areas we harped on last week that I harped on, I know a lot of people did, was the interior of the offensive line. And that group deserves credit. They picked it up this week against a really formidable Alabama defensive line. Last week the tackles were really the strengths, and the interior, especially at the guard positions, were kind of the weaker parts. And this week there was a little bit of a rotation going on of guards inside, but collectively as a group, they came together. They got it done when they needed to, whether it was pass protection, whether it was moving the ball, in some later goal line situations. I'm thinking about that one touchdown after the second interception. And so this is going to be, just like the back end of the secondaries is still kind of a little bit of a work in progress, and you want to see them gel. You want to see this offensive line continue to build on this and to gel and to come together. So it's not a finished product yet, and it really may, take a handful more games to really come together. But the good news is, kudos to Kyle Flood, just like to Kwiatkowski and the defensive staff. Kudos to Kyle Flood for addressing that after the Rice game, and whatever he did from that Rice game to the Alabama game, that helped those guys step up, play with confidence, play a little bit better. I haven't looked at any of their specific grades yet, so we'll see how they all graded out. But I think overall, obviously without the offensive line playing the way that they did, this game does not go the way that Texas wanted it to go. And Texas needed all hands on deck to get a win in Alabama. Sorry. I think, when you look at this game, it was not a perfect game for Texas by any means. You're going to go on the road to Alabama. It's probably not going to be a perfect game. It's going to be, a heavyweight bout, and you're going to take some shots and some licks. What this game is about is when you get stuck in adversity, when you get those shots back at you, how do you respond? I think overall Texas responded, especially in the fourth quarter. They had 21 points in the fourth quarter to Alabama's 8. And that's just what you want to see, that's how you go win games on the road. They're not going to be easy. They're not going to always be pretty, but you go get your job done, especially late in the games. That's how you go win these games on the road. So overall, just an incredible win for Texas again. The hope that we keep saying, the hope is this isn't just a win on just, another up and down season. You want this to be a win on what could be a incredible season for Texas. And Sarkisian's been saying this. The team knows this. It's on them to carry this win into next week against Wyoming, to be undefeated when you get into conference play, and then to carry that momentum all the way through conference play and to try to make something of this season in the final season of Big 12 conference play before they're permanent members of the SEC moving forward. So But take it in this week, Longhorns fans. I mean, I think everyone deserves this one, and it's been a while since we've had the opportunity to enjoy a win this big. And who knows what happens the rest of the way. I mean, hopefully it's good, but take it in as much as you can this week, because it's certainly a win for the history books and one that will be remembered for a long, long time. All right, guys, if you can hear this, I can barely breathe. I'm still working through this head cold, so I'm going to hop off. But we'll get back to it after the Wyoming game next weekend. Texas hosts Wyoming in DKR at 7 p.m. Look, this is no slouch game anymore. Wyoming is undefeated. They've knocked off Texas Tech, who Texas Tech actually played a pretty competitive game against Oregon, had a chance to beat Oregon in Lubbock. They couldn't get it done. But, we'll see what Texas can do coming off this big win against Alabama. They need to refocus and regroup and get their business done here in Austin, Texas against Wyoming this weekend. Hey, if you like this content, please like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at WesC512. You can also follow me on Instagram at SportsWithWes. This is not just a Texas football channel. This is also a channel just about sports and topics that I find interesting. As the NFL season gets going, I will talk about dynasty fantasy football in general, maybe just some general college football talk. So like and subscribe, and then I will be getting more into NBA talk when that season rolls around as well. So thank you again for watching. I promise next time I will be sounding better. And until then, talk to you later.